Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, and in this short video I'm going to look at two questions I'm asked quite often about printers and printing. One is, how often do you need to use the printer? And secondly, how much ink is wasted by a printer in cleaning or maintenance or whatever you like to call it. I'll address the second one first, the maintenance use of ink. Some printers, not this Pro 200, some larger printers have special tanks to collect waste ink. It's ink that's used in cleaning, and cleaning helps keep the printer running. And that's the important thing about it, is that think of the ink that's in the printer as having two jobs to do. One is to be sprayed onto paper and produce your prints. The second is keeping the printer running, stopping parts drying out, basically allowing it to work. Printers are actually, inkjet printers are very complex devices in the way that the ink droplets are laid on the paper and how it's done. They are, when you know more about how they work, quite incredible bits of engineering. But that needs maintenance, same as your car engine needs oil. Now, people go, well, it shouldn't waste ink. Well, yes, it's part of the design. It's how they work. I'm sure the printer companies would love to make a printer that needs virtually no ink in maintenance and all the ink can go onto the paper. But in practical terms of how to make a printer, you need to use up ink. So the normal thing I say to people is, it's a function of printers working. Get over it. Just get used to the cost. It is part of the cost of printing. If you're going to get a printer, you have to allow for the printer cost, the paper cost, the ink costs, and to know that some of that ink won't actually end up on your prints, just the way it works. Now, the more often you use your printer, proportionally more ink gets used for printing and less for maintenance. The maintenance amount is a relatively fixed amount over time. So if you use the printer a lot, you'll use perhaps a little bit more maintenance ink, but you'll use a lot more for printing. So the costs come down to it. This also comes down, looking at the reliability, as to whether you should leave your printer switched on or not. Now, it varies from printer to printer, and what I'll say is leave your printer plugged in. I do, uses a minuscule amount of power. Leave it plugged in and allow it to switch itself off if it wants to, or allow it to keep itself on. Most of them have quiet modes, they got low power modes they'll go into. But accept the defaults to start with, unless you have a good reason to change your defaults. So this Canon Pro 200 here, this hasn't been switched on for a day or so. I press that, it comes up straight away. If I've got the display there, if I tried this on, say, the Pro 300 and I hadn't used it for a few days, it may well agitate the inks. That's not a maintenance or cleaning operation, that's just shaking the inks because they're pigment inks on the 300. Likewise, if I was looking at the Epson P700, P900, they also have the way they go about doing things. Of course, the amount of inks and the cost of inks varies depending on the cartridge size. So this is the relatively small ink cartridge for this, the Canon Pro 200. I can't remember the precise amount of inks, somewhere around 12 millilitres of ink in it. Not a lot, but you still get quite a lot of prints out of it. It's the slightly larger cartridge from the Pro 300. This is a pigment ink printer, and that's why it needs agitating every so often. As I say, the agitation doesn't use ink or anything, it's just part of the cycle. If I had a Pro 1000, the Canon Pro 1000 does use up more ink, but the ink cartridges are bigger. Likewise upstairs, and I can't get it down here because it really is too big for me to lift easily, I've got an Epson P5000 17-inch printer. That's one of the ink cartridges that has 200 millilitres of ink in it. Now, obviously, this cartridge costs quite a bit more than one of these small cartridges, but the proportional cost of ink is less. So the bigger the ink cartridges, the bigger the printer, the cheaper it gets to print. But the printer costs more. And the other thing is you need to use it more regularly as well. The larger printers are designed to be run almost continuously. They're quite happy being started up at the beginning of the day, printing all day long, shut down when people go home, and that's it, 5 days a week they print. They're designed for that kind of use. If you use them no more than once a month, you've got a serious problem of ink build-up, things drying. So for a big printer like the one upstairs, I start it, even if I've not got a print to do, I start it up and let it do its auto check once a week to make sure that it will be ready and that it doesn't dry out, because you don't want to do that. Big printers. Smaller printers like this, I'll try and use it every week or two minimum. And it comes down to that. You don't need to print a large print like that to use up ink if you haven't got anything you want printing. However, what I would suggest is print a nozzle check pattern or something like that on plain paper. Do that every couple of weeks if you've not got any prints to do, and it should keep most printers okay. Now, I'm speaking from the UK, not that much above sea level, so I don't really need to worry about low humidity or temperature or altitude problems. If I was anywhere at altitude, very dry climate, I'd be much more careful about keeping my printer in good condition and making sure I didn't leave it unused for a length of time. Doesn't mean it'll break if you don't use it, just means that overall it's more reliable. So there we go. Hope that addresses a few of the problems. If you've got any specific questions, always feel free to email me at the Northlight Images website. There's a link at the end of this video to an article I wrote about the whole aspect of waste ink and why it's not really waste. So I hope you've enjoyed it and found this of use. Thanks very much.